Greetings. It is time for our fourth reading from C.F.W. Walther's The Proper Distinction of Law and Gospel. This can be purchased at cost, I believe, for $13, 450-page book. For $13 I paid for this copy on Amazon. And it's Pastor Dr. Jordan Cooper, who has put this out just in Sinner Publications. And so check out his channel as well, Jordan Cooper. Excellent stuff, introduction to Lutheranism and whatnot, and some conference speaking, and just a whole bunch of great material. I love Jordan Cooper. But I'm going to put, as I do usually, as I do always, in the explanation, an online copy, an older version that you can follow along with. And this work is a very important work. Out of all the works that I have on my computer, hundreds on my computer and behind me, and beside me, this most definitely is one of my top fives for sure. Very, very important. Very important work. With that being said, let's get into the third evening lecture. September 26, 1884. My friends, Christ himself has described the way to heaven as a narrow path, just so narrow as the path of the pure doctrine. For the pure doctrine is nothing else than the doctrine regarding the way to heaven. It is easy to lose your way when it is narrow, rarely traveled, and leads through a dense forest. Without intending to do so, and without being aware of it, you may make a wrong turn to the right or to the left. It is equally easy to lose the narrow way of the pure doctrine, which likewise is traveled by few people, and leads through a dense forest in erroneous teachings. You may land either in the bog or fanaticism, or in the abyss of rationalism. This is no jest. False doctrine is the poison to the soul. An entire banqueting party, drinking from cups containing an admixture of arsenic, can drink physical death from its cups. So an entire audience can invite spiritual and internal death by listening to a sermon that contains an admixture of the poison of false doctrine. A person can be deprived of his soul salvation by a single false comfort or single false reproof administered to him. This is all the more easy because we are naturally more accessible to the shining and dazzling light of human reason than to divine truth. For the natural man receives not the things of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them. 1 Corinthians 2:14. From what has been said, you can gather how foolish it is. Yea, excuse me. What an awful delusion has taken hold upon so many men's minds who ridicule the pure doctrine and say to us, do cease clamoring, pure doctrine, that can only land you in dead orthodoxy. Pay more attention to pure life, and you will raise a growth of genuine Christianity. That is exactly like saying to a farmer, do not worry forever about good seed, worry about good fruits. Is not a farmer properly concerned about good fruit when he is about getting good seed? I'm stumbling here. So just a concern about pure doctrine and the proper concern about genuine Christianity and a sincere Christian life. False doctrine is noxious seed, sown by the enemy to produce progeny of wickedness. The pure doctrine is wheat seed. From it spring the children of the kingdom, who even in the present life belong in the kingdom of Jesus Christ, and in the life to come will receive into the kingdom of glory. May God even now implant in your hearts a great fear, yea, a real abhorrence of false doctrine. May he graciously give you a holy desire for pure, saving truth revealed by God himself. This is the chief end with which these evening lectures are to serve. We shall now proceed to our study. Even tonight, we cannot take leave of our thesis at once. We have indeed observed the points of difference between law and the gospel by hearing two testimonies of Luther on this. By hearing two testimonies of Luther on the subject. We've also been strengthened in our conviction that we have heard about these distinctions is true. Now I must give you a practical exhibition of the manner in which these two doctrines must be proclaimed without mingling the one and the other. For this, to this end, let us submit a passage from Luther's exposition of chapters 6, 7, and 8 of the Gospel of St. John, written in the years 1530 to 1532. And this is an important point raised here. There is a general tendency among young people to value the beautiful language and style of an author more than the contents of his writings. That is a dangerous tendency. You must always have a greater regard for the matter than the manner of a treatise. The law must be preached in all severity, but the hearers must get this impression. The sermon will help those still secure in their sins towards salvation. Wherever the gospel is preached, this is the impression that the hearers are to receive. This sermon applies only to those who have been smitten by the law. Let me repeat that. This sermon applies only to those who have been smitten by the law and are in need of comfort. On the words of Christ, John 7:37, if any man thirsts, let him come unto me and drink. Luther offers this comment. These are the two subjects in which we preach. The law produces thirst. It leads the hearer to hell and slays him. The gospel, however, refreshes him and leads him to heaven. Luther speaks of the difference not only when explaining passages in which the terms law and gospel occur, but wherever he has an opportunity to preach these two subjects. The law tells us what we are to do and charges us with not having done it, no matter how holy we are. Thus the law makes me uncertain. It chases me about, thus it makes me thirsty. Now when Christ invites those who thirst, he means such as have been crushed under the hammer blow of the law. This is vitally important, people. Now when Christ invites those who thirst, he means such as have been crushed under the hammer blows of the law. Directly, Christ invites only these to come to him. Indirectly, indeed, he invites all men. A person thus thirsting is not to do anything but drink, that is, receive the consolations of the gospel. When a person is really thirsty and is handed but a small glass of water, how greatly refreshed he feels. But when a person is not thirsty, you may fill one glass of water after the other for him, and it will do him no good. It will not refresh him. Luther proceeds, quote, the law says, thou shalt not kill. Its whole urging is directed towards what I am to do. It says, thou shalt love God with all thy heart and thy neighbor as thyself. Thou shalt not commit adultery, nor swear, and not steal. And when it speaks out thus, see that you have lived, or are now living according to what I command you to do so. When you have reached this point, you will find that you do not love God with all your heart as you should, and you will be forced to confess, oh my God, I have not done what I should. I have not kept the law, for neither do I love thee from my heart today, nor will I do so tomorrow. I make this same confession year after year, that I have failed to do this or that. There seems to be no end to the confession of my trespasses. When will there be an end of this? When shall I find rest unto my soul and be fully assured of divine grace? You will ever be in doubt tomorrow. You will repeat your confession of today. The general confession will always apply to you. Now, where your conscience find rest in a footstool, because you surely know how God is disposed towards you. Your heart cannot tell you, even though you may be doing good works to the limit of your ability, for the law remains in force with this injunction: Thou shalt love God and man with your whole heart. You say, I am not doing it. The law replies, you must do it. Thus the law puts me in anguish. I have to become thirsty, feel a terror, tremble, and exclaim, how am I to act, in order that God may lift up his gracious countenance upon me? I am to obtain the grace of God, but on the condition that I keep the 10 Commandments, that I have good works and many merits to show. But that will never happen. I'm not keeping the 10 Commandments, therefore no grace is extended to me. The result is that man can find no rest, trusting in his good works. He would be glad to have a good conscience. He yearns for a good and cheerful, peaceful conscience, and for real comfort. He thirsts for contentment. That is the thirst of what Jesus speaks. It lasts until Christ comes and asks, would you like to be at ease? Would you like to have rest and a good conscience? I advise you to come to me. Dismiss Moses and no longer think of your good works. Distinguish me and Moses. Distinguish me and Moses. From Moses you have thirst, which you are suffering. He has done his part for you. He has discharged his office to you. He has put you in anguish and made you thirsty. I am a different teacher. I will give you to drink and refresh. A person who has not been put through this experience is a sound without meaning, a sounding, brassing, tinkling cymbal. But a preacher who has personally passed through this experience can really speak from the heart, and what he says will go into the hearts of his hearers. It is a mere accident when someone is awakened. It is a mere accident when someone is awakened from sin and converted by the preacher, who is himself unconverted. Accordingly, when preparing to preach, the preacher must draw up a strategic plan. This is important, in order to win his hearers for the kingdom of God. Otherwise, the hearers may say of his sermon, oh, that was nice, but that will be all. They will leave the church with an empty heart. Quote, if anyone were well versed in this art, whoever could properly make this distinction, he would deserve to be called a doctor of theology. For the law and the gospel must be kept apart from one another. The law is to terrify men and make them shy and despairing, especially rude and vulgar people, until they learn that they cannot do what the law demands, nor achieve God's favor. That will make them despair of themselves, for they can never accomplish this aim, obtaining God's favor by their efforts to keep the law. Dr. Stuppitz, German, I remember, said on me on a certain occasion, I have more than 1,000 times lied to God, and I would become godly and never did what I promised. Now I shall never again make up my mind to become godly, for I see that I cannot carry out my resolution. I shall never lie to God any more. That was also my experience under the papacy. I was very anxious to become godly. How long did it last? Until I had finished reading Mass. An hour later I was more evil than before. This state of affairs goes on until a person is quite weary and is forced to say, I shall put away from me being godly according to Moses and the law. I shall follow another preacher who says to me, come to me, you who are weary and I will refresh you. Let this word, come to me, sound pleasant to you. This preacher does not teach that you can love God or how you must act and live, but he tells you how you must become godly and be saved, spite of the fact that you cannot do so as you should. That preaching is wholly different from the teaching of the law of Moses, which is concerned only with works. The law says, thou shalt not sin. Go ahead and be godly. Do this, do that. But Christ says, thou art not godly, but I have been godly in thy place. Let me read that again. But Christ says, thou art not godly, but I have been godly in thy place. Take from me what I give thee. Thy sins are forgiven thee. These two sermons must be preached upon men at the same time. It is not right for you to stick to one doctrine only, for it is only the law that makes men thirsty, and it does this only to terrify men's hearts. But it is the gospel alone that satisfies men, makes them cheerful, revives them, and comforts their conscience. Now let the preaching of the gospel only... Now lest the gospel... Now, sorry, I'm half asleep here. Now lest the preaching of the gospel only produce lazy, frigid Christians who imagine that they need not to do good works, the law says to the old Adam, sin not, be godly, shun that, do this, etc. But when the conscience